Today we're doing cash flow analysis, and this is so crucial for all property investors to do because I've seen so many property investors, and myself included, skip this mistake, and it becomes a real pain in the ass when you realize that you can't hold this property, because the whole point of property investing is for you to hold the property and make money at the end, which means that you need to know the cash flow, you need to know the figures in and out. So let's get into it. Today I'm doing a cash flow analysis on property. Now, this is one of the most important lessons today that we have to cover, and something that most investors neglect. Most investors do a very basic cash flow analysis, or some of them don't even do any cash flow analysis. And it's so crucial that you actually do it, because if you don't do the cash flow analysis, right, and you miscalculate or there's unexpected expenses that pop up, this makes you in a big financial position, because it can first force you to sell property when it's undesirable, when you just bought it, where you're most likely going to lose money. And second thing is, the whole point of property investing is for you to make money. If you're not making money on this deal, then why are you investing your money into it? We're all here to make money. We don't love property. We're here to make money first, right? So when do you do a cash flow analysis? This is very crucial. Before you look at buying any property, right? Let's say you found a property you like. Before you seriously consider where to buy this one, you need to do the cash flow analysis to see if you can even hold the property. Because most investors, for you to make money on the investment, you need to hold this property for numerous years. The reason why is because the high cost involved with buying a property. You gotta pay stamp duty, you gotta pay agent fee, bank fees, all that. And also the high reselling costs if you're forced to sell. You gotta pay agent fees to 3%. You gotta pay CGT, you gotta pay all this fees involved, where it makes it very difficult, where if you buy a property and sell it, right, straight away in a year or two, you're most likely gonna lose money on that deal. So it's very crucial that you can hold the asset. Right. So let's cover through the main points. The first thing on the left-hand side is the income, right? So this is the rental income that you're receiving on this property every week. The second thing you need to consider is the rental yield. And this is usually between 2 to 4%. And this is basically considering as a percentage of the rental income you're earning on this investment, how does it compare to the value of the home? Okay. Now, as an investor, you want to try to have between 3 to 4% or more so that it's viable for you to hold this asset. On the other hand, we have the expenses. We've got home insurance, which is the insurance to cover the property. Usually it can cost between $1,000 and $2,000 a year. We have council rates, which is the fee you got to pay for the council to hold the property. That's usually about $2,000. You can always search local council to find out the exact figure. You got water rates, which is the same thing, water fees. You can search the local council to find out water fees. The other one, you got property management. So most of the time when you buy this property, you are not managing this property. You don't want to hassle, find tenants. You don't want to have to find who manage the property. You don't want to do weekly inspections. You have to normally most investors outsource this to a property manager. That means you have to pay 8%, usually is the standard fee. And you got to pay like a week's rent or advertising fee to get a tenant. The other thing is bank fees. Banks charge you between $100 to $395 a year to hold that loan. The other one is pest control, which is, you're spending about $300 for pest control. You got mortgage repayments. So this would depend on which lender you go, which bank you are, which rate you are. But it can be, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Land tax. So if you got this as a, under a trust or a unit trust or any other sort of company structure, or you more than your threshold, you got to pay land tax. Other costs could be like if you've got a pool or other maintenance costs involved. And the biggest one is repairs and maintenance. This is the biggest cost. Normally it's like 1% of the property. So if the property's worth $500,000, it's $5,000. But I've seen, like, one of my investments I bought, we had to pay like $8,000 for aircon. And the total maintenance to hold that property was like almost 10 to 12 grand for the first year. And especially if you buy older properties, properties are more than 20, 30 years. You got a lot of costs of, aircon, the fencing issues. There's some damage to the lighting or some, there's always this unexpected cost that pops up. And that's the silent killer that most of these property gurus don't mention. So keep in mind, it can be between 1 to 2%. So you got to save between $5,000 to $10,000 just for that, especially if you buy the older ones. Now this, right, doesn't make a lot of sense to most investors. The way I want to really emphasize this is show you a real life example. So here's a property that we did cash flow analysis for. This property is in North Central Coast. It's worth about $600,000, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 800 square meters. So the rental income on this is $520 per week, which means the rental yield is about 4.51%. So it's not bad. Now the expenses where we go through the itty gritty here. So the home insurance about $200 a month. Council rates $166. Water rates $41. Property management fees $135. Repairs and maintenance about $416. Bank fees about $10. Pest control $27. Mortgage $2,500. Land tax $0, and other costs $0. Right? So when you add all these expenses and you compare here, the total income you're making is about $2,253 or $27,000 a year. The total expenses on the hand is almost 3,500. So the total expenses a year is about almost 42 grand, which means that every month you, as a bare minimum, right, you got to put in about $1,250 or over the whole year, almost 15 grand. Now, for most investors, that's a fair bit of money you got to put in. So when you do this, you have to make sure that you're actually analyzing this and seeing in your budget, can I afford to put in $1,250 a month? Can I actually afford it? Because if I can't afford it and the rates go up or there's more unexpected costs, you will be forced in a very compromised position financially. Now, the other thing for this to make it viable is also you got to consider the annual growth, right? If this property is growing around 7%, that means that each year you're making about 40 grand, 40, 50 grand compounding this. So that way you go, the capital growth is about 40, 30, 50 grand minus the expenses holding it. I'm still making 30 grand a year. So that's how you consider. The other thing that we have to factor in is negative gearing, right? Especially if you bought this property under your own personal name. So let's say you're making about 100 grand, right? And in this instance, you're making a loss of about 15 grand a year. You can claim that against your taxable income. So which means you only pay on tax on 85 grand. And if your marginal rate is about 32.5%, this means you save about 5 grand in tax savings. So you're saving 5 grand in tax savings, but overall, you're still making a loss of about $10,000. This is how you do the full analysis. And it's so important that you go through the nitty-gritty. I've done the hard work for you. I've made a spreadsheet where I've gone through all the factors. I've put in all the figures for you. You just plug them in and it spits it out for you. And more than happy to put that in the link below. Just click on that for us or comment spreadsheet below if you want that. We'll send you that link through. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you need anything more, just let me know. Thanks so much.